computer. Okay, we're starting, and we're going to talk about the book of Devarim. But before I start, I want to say a few words about this book of Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim is a complete different way of writing in the Torah. There's hardly any stories. There's no stories. And it's one long speech of Moshe. And I always say, who's making a noise? And I always say, Johnny, it's from your mother's computer, perhaps. Okay, it could be a video. Or Victor said, Victor.
I feel like my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to try and.
Okay, I've turned off Victor's because I can see you. So what I'm trying to say is, he can hear me, but I'm muted. What I'm trying to say is, Sefer Devarim is called Sefer HaDiburim. Moshe didn't stop talking. Just a second. I thought he was mumbling. So here the Midrash comes and said he stopped mumbling. We'll talk about it next week, and I'll show what's special about the book of Sefer Devarim, that it was only 37 days. It starts from the 1st of Shvat until Zayin Be'adar. That's when Moshe died. That means we're talking about a month and a week. And 37 days, it didn't stop talking. Baruch Hashem, okay, that's why we got Sefer Devarim, and it's a complete different attitude. One of the things which is completely different in this book is, for instance, that the mitzvot, either a new mitzvot, and the mitzvot we're talking about, for instance, in having a king, or for instance, how to go and fight against other nations, but before you start fighting, you always have to ask for peace, which is a mitzvah. Always ask for shalom. Oh, we always pray for shalom, and we always start. So these things are always preparation. Of course, all these new mitzvot are preparation for entering into Eretz Israel. But those are half of the mitzvot which are new. The other half are copied or again, not copied, they've returned over from the other places of the Torah, but always in a different manner. And the manner is, I'm going to show you that it's going to be more, everything's civilized. Also, in the other thing I'm talking about, it's more chevrati. Chevrati, how do you say in English? More...
social.
Social, exactly. That's what I was looking for. It's more social. And here is an example that is from last week's parasha, and I'm bringing last week's parasha in comparison to this week's parasha. Okay, we're talking about the end of the last week's parasha. The book of Bamidbar finishes with chapter, nearly finishes. It's got 36 chapters. 35 is talking about Arei HaLeviim, the 48 different cities of the Leviim. And here in the middle, we're talking about, I won't go into it, all the colors, there's an amazing amount of colors. I won't explain that we're talking about the 6 cities which are called Arei Miklat. They are the protection for the killers that didn't do it intentionally. But this mitzvah appears again in Sefer Devarim. And here I want to show the difference between Sefer Bamidbar and Sefer Devarim. And here I brought in blue. Can you see the writings in blue? Everybody can see, yes? You can see anything? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see. Okay. So Sefer Devarim, the blue is, there are items or details which are not written in Sefer Bamidbar. And one of the details is, you'll put exactly the 3 cities in Eretz Israel, a third. That means they're exactly in the same distance from one another. Asher yanchilcha Hashem Elokecha. Rashi comes and says, and I wrote here on the side, and I explain that Rashi explains and the Chazal explain that you put enormous, what's it called? Shlatim.
Signs.
Notices, signs, exactly. Which means the person who's running away and has to be protected because he didn't kill intentionally, he did it unintentionally, he should be saved. And the only way to be saved from the one who wants to kill him, from the relative of the one who's been killed, slaughtered, and died, unfortunately, is the only way. He has to run quickly. So here you can see also another word, another thing which is not written before. It's written here, Ein Mishpat Mavet. He doesn't deserve death. So you can see that these items are written, not written in the book of Bamidbar, but are written here. I'll go to the next page and I'll show you what I mean that it's more social. So first of all, you can see this item, but this item is not the only item. Just 1 second. I'll just show you in just 1 second. I have to stop sharing. And here I want to show you, where is it? Just 1 second. We're going to the next page. Here's the new page. It's exactly the same 2 chapters. This is in Sefer Bamidbar, and this is in Sefer Devarim, and here I put a word in black. By the way, whoever has my book will see I never use black. It's a horrible color. It's in talking about terrible things. The only page that I've got in the whole book in black, which I'm bolded in black, is the word Rotseach, the killer, the killer, killer. Can you see how many times is written the word killer? I wrote here on the side, by the way, on the left side, can you see in Hebrew, can you see in black here, 21 times. Of course, it will always appear 7 times or 14 times or 21 times, the timetable of 7. But look how many times it's written Rotseach, Rotseach, Rotseach. That means the attitude of this killer, he did it unintentionally, but how does the Torah call him the whole time? It doesn't call him manslaughter, it calls him Rotseach. Interesting. But in Sefer Devarim, it's written only 3 times. By the way, I won't explain now. The 3 times it's written here, Rotseach, is before he's been in the courtroom. That means we don't know yet if he's a real killer, or later they'll find out he wasn't a killer and did it intentionally. So that's why it's written the Rotseach, Vayalanus Shama. Rotseach, the killer, will go to the city, he'll run away to the city, and there he'll be judged, and they'll find out, was he a real killer and he deserves a bigger punishment or death penalty or other penalties, or not. So you can see, here's only written 3 times, and those 3 times are before that he's been accused yet. We don't know if he's a real killer or not.
Potentially.
Again?
He's a potentially Rotseach.
He's a potential Rotseach. Very good. Victor, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're with us. Can you see everything? Can you see everything? It's all right?
Yes, I'm fine. Okay. Thank you very much. It's the first time I did it in this one.
Okay. You heard me from the beginning for the lesson? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, you heard me? Okay. So I'm saying you can see, for instance, a big difference between what's written in Sefer Bamidbar, the same mitzvah, but here it's gotten a different attitude in Sefer Devarim. Here it's more social, it's more to protect him. So actually we can see that in Sefer Bamidbar, I won't go into all the words and all the things, but the attitude is he deserves a punishment, and that's why he's locked up. By the way, how long is he locked up? Until the Kohen Gadol will die. Can you imagine that this potential killer or this person, he did it intentionally, he's 49 years old, 50 years old. And the Kohen Gadol was just nominated a year ago, and he's now 16 years old. By the way, Kohanim Gdolim could be nominated from the age of 13. So who will die first? You understand who can die first. The Kohen Gadol will live much more than the killer. That means actually that the killer will stay all his life in punishment. So the whole attitude in Sefer Bamidbar with this mitzvah is, you deserve a punishment. Why do you deserve a punishment? Because you weren't careful enough. I won't go to the whole attitude here and the whole details, and there's enormous amount of details and explaining you weren't careful. But in the second place, where we got in Sefer Devarim, the attitude is completely different. It's not a place of a punishment. It's a place of savor. It's a place of savor. So you have to try to make it easy for him. And there you can see that he did it by mistake. For instance, here in Pasuk Hey, in verse Hey, you can see even that the incident here is not written in Sefer Bamidbar. Here, the incident is that he used an axe. He even put a lot of notices up, I'm going to cut trees, and he was very careful. But what can you do that by mistake, it wasn't his fault, the axe came out from the handle, or another possibility is that when the axe hit the tree, a piece of the tree, the splinter went and shot and went and harmed somebody else. He couldn't think of that. He couldn't think. So a person like that is unintentional. So here, this is one example to show you there's a big difference between the mitzvot, which are repeated from the other books of the Torah. In Sefer Devarim, it's more social. Let's go to the next page, and we'll show what happens in our parasha. Just 1 second. I'm going to the next page.
Okay, I'm going to ask a general question.
Yes, go on, please.
So, if a rotseach in Bamidbar and Gam Devarim, a rotseach is a rotseach bishgaga.
Yes.
In other words, that's how the term. So, when we go back to the Aseret HaDibrot,
yes,
does that affect the way we should understand or translate Lo Tirtzach?
Okay, Lo Tirtzach is definitely
the controversy I have with someone. Okay,
yeah.
So.
Okay, very good. Okay, so first of all, you can see that also a person like that, you can explain to him, yes, the 10 Commandments are also saying, the 10 Commandments are considered, they are considered laws. I mean, they are considered principles. They're more principles. Like the Chasad, he's the Rabbi Saadia Gaon, comes and says the 10 Commandments are actually all kinds of laws or rules. From here, you can take out all the rest of the mitzvot. All the rest of the mitzvot, for instance, Shabbat is an example for all the Chagim. Lo Tirtzach means you also not allowed to harm somebody without killing him. You're not allowed to bash anybody. You're not allowed to hit anybody. So you're perfectly right that the Rotzeach there is even meaning unintentionally. Be careful not to kill. You know what? Not to kill, not to harm, and not to do any accident. You're perfectly right.
Good.
So that definitely by the Rasag, you're perfectly right. By the way, that's the only place that Rashi says that he quotes the Rasag. It's the only place in the whole Rashi, in the 10 Commandments, he says, yes, the 10 Commandments are principles of all the mitzvot. That means it's not only to kill, it's don't harm and don't do any damage. Okay, does that answer you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so you go on and tell the person that you should.
Yes.
Okay, okay, I'm going into our Parashat Devarim.
Okay.
I didn't take the first chapter. The first chapter is talking about the first 38 years. And actually, it's a summary. If you look in the parasha on the first chapter, it's a summary of the 30 of the sins. Of the sins of this first and second year. The first and second year, and because of that, we stayed another 38 years. Okay, so of course the sins are, and especially the second sin, which is the meraglim, is the spies, and that's why we stayed 38 years. That's the first chapter. The second chapter starts, let's read what is written. Vanefen vanisa hamidbara. We had to travel on the second year. We're already talking about the second year. All the commentators explain that this is already the second year. The end of the second year after there was a gzera. There was already how do you say gzera? There was a
decree.
A decree, yes. You told me all that last week. I didn't remember that. Decree, Am Yisrael are not going to go into Eretz Yisrael. And so we turned around in the Midbar. We had to go to the wilderness. Derech Yam Suf, I won't go into the whole details. Vayomer Hashem Elai, Rav Lachem, Sovet Tahara. You have to circle the whole area. I didn't bring a map. I should have brought a map, but you know that there's different maps, but most of the maps are showing that we really had to travel enormous amount around the vicinity. And here it's written that we have to circle in red, Achechem b'nei Esav, Acheinu b'nei Esav. Now that's unfortunate, because with brothers like this, we don't need enemies. B'nei Esav, they're Acheim. Even so, one of the explanations, and he was amazing. I don't have to give any marks to the Ramban. The Ramban is an amazing parsha. And of course, Rashi is number one. The Ramban is number two. I won't go into explaining why. I give a whole course about the Ramban, that he's got 4 different ways of explaining the Torah. He doesn't go by the Pshat, he also goes by the Remez, by the Drash, and also in Kabbalah. By the way, the Kabbalah, he doesn't go in Kabbalah, he calls it Derech HaEmet, the true way. Wow, the true way, that's the Kabbalah. He sometimes brings Derech HaEmet, and he brings all kinds of... Again?
Every time he says Al Pi Derech HaEmet.
When you see Derech HaEmet, you know he's going to Kabbalic things. Yeah. By the way, the first Kabbalic cult wasn't in the 16th century by Rabbi Yosef Karo in Tzfat. The first Kabbalic movement was, there's a lot of noise, whoever's in...
Sorry.
Okay, the first Kabbalic movement was the Ramban's son in Egypt, called Rabbi Avraham ben Aramban, and he was actually the first Kabbalic person. He didn't learn Zohar because they didn't know the Zohar yet, but he was going into the...
Hold on. Is it I think it's Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, not Ramban.
He had Avram and he had Avram. Avraham ben Aramban didn't write Kabbalic because he carried on like his father, and he was a very down-to-earth person. Like, he quotes a lot his father, but there's also Avraham of the Ramban, and his son of the Ramban, and his son was more Kabbalic. You're perfectly right. Also Rambam with Mem also had...
But I thought that Rambam, not Ramban, Rambam's son was a Kabbalist too.
Kabbalist. Okay.
Or at least Sufi Kabbalist.
Okay. So okay. I didn't learn that deep. Okay, you're right. He was Sufi, but okay. But there is a difference. But from the Ramban onwards, with the Nun from the Ramban onwards, it was much more normal. Let's go again. The Ramban explains actually that these people, Bnei Esav, are not Edom. He explains we're not talking about Edom. There were 2 peoples which were the same, from the same races, from the same Esav. One was called Edom, that they were more cruel, and they didn't let Am Yisrael, and Melech Edom came to fight. But the southern ones were more, they were the minority, and they were Bnei Esav, and he talks about this, they gave food. Yeah, it's written here in Pasuk Vav, Ochel tishberu meitam, you'll buy from them food, and you'll buy money, and you'll buy water, and you'll buy things. And they, Bnei Esav, are not like Edom. They're 2 different peoples from the same root, from Esav, but they're 2 different peoples. The minority, when perhaps they were more frightened from Israel because they were a minority, so they gave food. They didn't allow us to go through, but they gave us food. Okay, anyhow, so they are more brothers. Why do I say they're more brothers? It explains now the yellow. There's only 3 times in the whole Torah that in the middle of a verse, there is a split in the middle of the verse. We talked about it a week ago, if you remember, in Parashat Pinchas, 2 weeks ago. In Parashat Pinchas. No, Vayomer, we talked about something else. That's Vayomer, that's something else. And I was talking about that there's a split and there's a gap in the middle of the Pasuk. We talked about something else, that the Magifa, there was a plague, and then there's a stop in the middle of the Pasuk, and the Pasuk carries on, and it starts counting Am Yisrael. And it's very similar to the first place, that it's exactly the same. Where's the first place? We talked about it a couple of weeks. We've been very good, of course. What do you expect? You won't know, of course you'll know, of course. Okay, so we're talking about, of course, Ilan, of course, knows that we're talking about that Reuven was sinning, Vaishkav Reuven et Pilegesh Aviv, and there's a gap in the middle of the thing, and then they're counting all the sons of Yaakov to say, even though he was sinning, he's still accepted in Am Yisrael. Exactly the same sin that happens in Baal Peor. They were taking other women, shiksas, and taking other women, even so that Shimon, and mainly Shimon, was sinning, and they all think. But this is the third place, the only other time that in the Torah there's a gap. By the way, in the Tanakh, it's also very seldom. There's one book that has enormous amount of places where it's split in the middle. It's Sefer Shmuel. I won't explain now why, but it's interesting. One day, perhaps next week, we'll talk about the whole Tanakh. I'll go just in general and I'll talk about history, and I'll talk about the Tisha B'Av. So I'll give about the history, and I'll talk also about the different books and what each book resembles. But anyhow, the Torah is only 3 places that there's a gap in the middle of the pasuk. So twice we already talked about. This place, it differentiates between brothers, achichem, to not brothers. Okay, we know that Moab and Ammon, can you see in blue and in purple, Ammon, I'll go down a bit, Ammon and Moab were meant to be like brothers. They were actually our cousins, marvelous cousins. With cousins like this, we don't need any enemies. They were actually the sons of the sons or grandsons, depends how you look at it, of Lot. And Lot was the nephew of Abraham. So they should have been a bit nicer to us. Abraham saved Lot. So they should have given us water and food. Not only they didn't supply us any supplies, they also cursed us, and we know that. So that's why there might be a gap in the middle to show there's a difference between brothers and not brothers. The brothers are a tiny bit better. They're also not exactly lovey-doveys, but at least they gave us a bit food. I explained the Ramban, and these didn't even give us food. Another reason is I wrote here in yellow on the side, and I explained, by the way, the system of the book is, can you see this is page number 266, always the page opposite, 265, always the right page is the explanation. I give a long explanation why there's a gap there, and I explain the explanation is that there's a different, we've gone to a different route. Until here, we were traveling all the way around, a long, long journey, and this journey took 38 years. But suddenly we went from here in the middle, Vanefen, and we moved to another direction. I wrote here in the middle that the direction here from the 2nd year till the 40th year was going from west to east. That means we're going far away from Eretz Yisrael. We're going far away. We're going into the wilderness. Why? Because we were punished. But from now on, we're going from we got to a certain stage. From now on, we're going from the south. We're going northwards to come into Eretz Yisrael. So this is actually in the middle to show that there's a different direction. I should have showed the map here, but instead of going from here to here, we're going now from here upwards. We're going upwards, and we're coming into Jericho. Soon to Jericho, we go to Arvot Moab and so on. So here, this is what's written, Vanefen v'navor derech midbar Moab. We went through the wilderness. I talked about it 3 weeks ago, that the main people were going into the wilderness. And they were in the east side of Jordan. You know that most of Jordan is a desert, but at least half of Jordan, it's a high ramp, it's a high place, and there's quite a lot of rain, by the way, quite a lot of rain. I'll say in brackets, I really don't understand why we're still giving them water, because we are giving some of the water from the Kinneret to the Jordans, because early thing, we had a scheme, we had a agreement with them, and we didn't cancel it. They should have neutralized the rains that they have, because their mountains are higher than our mountains. anyhow, they don't know how to use the water. We know how to resolve water, and we take from the sea, and we make them sweeter water, and we give them enormous amount of water. But more eastwards is really a desert, and that's where Am Yisrael were walking. I talked about it 2 weeks ago, that the majority of Am Yisrael were in the wilderness, but the army wasn't going in the wilderness. The army was going through the land and fighting and fighting, and that's Sefer Milchamot Hashem. That's the book of Milchamot Hashem, and we talked about it. I won't go back again. So here we're moving towards Eretz Yisrael. We go through the wilderness of Moab, but this time we're not going eastwards. We're going northwards towards Har Nevo, where Moshe later died. So I won't go into the whole thing. Always the word atah. Can you see the word atah? Always when there's a speech, in any speech, a short speech or a long speech, you'll always see in the middle of the speech in the Torah or in the Tanakh the word atah. Atah doesn't mean you with an aleph. It means ayin. It means et. Now. It means now. What does it mean now? Now I'm getting to the conclusions. By the way, I'll give you just one example. You remember that you remember Yehuda was coming and begging to Yosef. He didn't know what it was Yosef, and gives a whole speech. You are cruel. You're making our father die. Parashat Vayigash. You remember the beginning of Parashat Vayigash? But right at the end of that long speech, and he gives an amazing speech, one of the amazing speeches in the Torah, how he tries to show how he's a cruel person, and you're making our father die. At the end, he says, "Ata, now make me instead of Benjamin." That means it's always a conclusion. After I've talked and tried to persuade you, now I'm giving you the conclusion. The conclusion is atah. Many speeches you'll see in the Torah, you'll always look for the word atah, means what's the conclusion. By the way, also Joseph, when he solved the dreams of Pharaoh, he also talks about the 7 cows, the 7 thin cows, suddenly he comes with the word atah. Now find a person who is clever enough, and he'll find your solution. So the word atah is tachlis. Let's get to the bottom line. The bottom line is what to do. And also here, ve'atah, after that you've surrounded Eretz Moab and you're not allowed to go into the Moabs. And here I want to say why we're not allowed to go in Moab. I said before, a few minutes ago, Esav are brothers. Well, sort of brothers. I wouldn't, a brother like that is really not a nice brother. But at least we can't fight him. We can't go and invade their land. Why in Moab and Ammon, which were terrible cousins, why there we couldn't go in? So I'll say just in general, I'll give 2 sentences, but it's a whole topic. When we get to Avraham, we'll get back to Sefer Bereshit, I'll explain. Avraham was promised the land of Big Israel. Big Israel means not Israel of today, but it's an enormous Israel, and we once talked about it, enormous Israel, which is talking about from the Nile until the Euphrates. We're talking about Eretz Yisrael Hagdolah. But Abraham has got only 1 or 2 sons. He's got Ishmael, he's got Yitzchak. How many people has he got? He hasn't got many people. So Abraham actually asked Hashem, and we'll see where he asks it. He asks, I can't conquer all this by myself. So Hashem says to him, you know what? Your relatives will be not in Eretz Yisrael, in the small Eretz Yisrael, but they live the outside Eretz Yisrael, the big Eretz Yisrael, and they'll stay there until the Mashiach will come. Well, yeah, Hashem doesn't use the word Mashiach and so on, but it means until the time will come, so they will stay there. So you can see what is surrounding Eretz Canaan, what is surrounding Eretz Canaan, all our relatives. Well, I told you before that it's not exactly marvelous relatives, but you can see that in the south, on the other side of the Jordan, you've got Edom and Bnei Esav. More above that is Moab, Moab. Above that is Ammon, and above that is actually Lavan, Aram, which is actually Lavan, which is also not a great relative, the uncle of Yaakov that really it was terrible with Yaakov, but he's also a relative. So you can see the ones who are surrounding Eretz Yisrael and protecting and keeping us for meantime, Eretz Yisrael, are the relatives. That means they're actually protecting from other invaders. That's important to know. It's protecting from other invaders, and the invaders were later, we'll see at the continuation, is Og and Sichon that invaded, and that's why we had to conquer them. So interesting, we are not allowed to go, not in Esav, we're not in Moab, and not in Ammon, because they're relatives. I said not marvelous relatives, but they've got a task to keep the land for us for later. So here it's written, Ata, now, here's the main bottom line, Kumu v'ivru lachem et Nachal Zared, go northwards, v'na'avor et Nachal Zared, v'ayamim asher alachnu is 38 years. And here is a sentence that actually I wrote here in green, is a summary, a very, very short summary of 38 years that we were actually waiting, and then we could go from then on towards Eretz Yisrael. So there's a small summary here of 38 years. I've said it over and over again. There's nothing written about the 38 years. Wow. Actually, Sefer Bamidbar, and we talked about it, I talked about it with Avi before you all joined, that until chapter 19 in Sefer Bamidbar is the second year. From chapter 20, I don't know if I talked about it, from chapter 20 is already the 40th year. That means from second year to 40th year, there's nothing written about the 38 years? No, there's nothing written. Here, there's a few items, a few verses, which is written, Vayamim asher alachnu mikadesh barnea, we went from here to here, 38 years, and all that generation died. That means there's nothing actually written. We know from Midrashim what happened, but actually there's nothing really written. Okay, then you've got Bnei Ammon, and we're talking about, there's a line. I put a line in the middle. Why did I put a line in the middle? Because until now we're talking about, have a look on top of the line in light blue. These are all the Bnei Avraham that are that they sat, Yarshu, they inherited the other side of the Jordan, and we are not allowed to touch them. Unfortunately, they were wicked, but we're not allowed to touch them. But we have to go round those people. We went round Edom, we went round Moab, we went round Ammon. But suddenly from this line onwards, and it's exactly the same amount of verses, I counted the verses and saw, here it comes from verse 24, Kumusu vivot Nachal Arnon, this is another river, Arnon, and there you are allowed to do, not you allowed, you even commanded, Natati bi'edchad Sichon. You have to go and take Sichon, because Sichon was an invader, he's not your relative, and you have to go and fight him. And Sichon was a fierce empire. He was from the Hittite empire that comes from the south of Turkey. I won't go into the whole history, but they are the Hittim. We know the Hittim had also few cities in the land of Israel. By the way, Hebron was part of the Hittites. Abraham had to buy the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the tomb of Ma'arat HaMachpelah from the Hittite, but the main Hittite come from Sichon and Og, and they were here, and you are allowed, and you even you should go and fight them. The second person is, of course, Og. So here you've got a blue line I put in the middle to show it's not in the middle, but you've got all these verses which are talking about the ones you are not allowed to touch, the ones you are meant to touch, and not only touch, they are fierce people, and don't be frightened. So all this is talking about the other nations which we are going to do, and that was on the 40th year. The 40th year were amazing miracles, and the 40th year, Am Yisrael were much more, I would say, more brave. They weren't frightened like the Chet HaMeraglin, that they didn't say, oh, we're not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, they're frightening, and so on. These sons, these daughters were much more fierce, they were ready to fight, and they fought two enormous, I would say, empires. Then I put another blue line. What's the other blue line? This whole chapter is talking about Ad Kan Tiur HaKibushim. Until here in the middle, we're talking about what we did conquer. from now on is the conclusions from these conquers. And I'll explain what's the conclusions on the next page. Until I move to the next page, if anybody wants to ask, can ask. I'll just show, this is a history, which is an important history to be explained to Am Yisrael, how to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why is this whole history written? To say, in the 40th year you were brave, carry on being brave in the time of Yoshua. By the way, the time of Yoshua, they were really brave. They were really brave. One of the brave people was, of course, Kalev ben Yefuneh, that he himself captured Hebron with all the enormous giants. I'm using the same chapter again, this last page. This is the 4th page, but then now I'm going again on talking about this whole chapter 2 and 3. Chapter 1 I told you I'm not talking about. And here I'm going to show you that many of the words which are written about Moab, exactly the same words are written about Ammon. For instance, you can see here the same words, Vayomer Hashem Elai, Al Tatzar et Moab. Don't make...
We don't see the text.
You don't see the text?
Or I don't see the text.
Oh,
No.
sorry. Good that you just said. I have to share it again. I'm sorry. You're perfectly right. Good that you said to me. Now the text has appeared?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It's the same page like last time, but I've bolded words which are similar in Moab and Ammon. Can you see in the dark red? Or the dark red? Here it's written in verse number 9, Vayomer Hashem Elai al tatzar et Moab. Don't make Moab angry because you can't fight them. Al tidgar bam. Don't aggravate them, and don't go into war with them. And exactly the same happens also here in the same with Ammon. Al tutzorem ve'al tidgar bam. Exactly the same words. All the words which are written in red on Moab is written on Ammon. But here I'm going to tell you the words which are not in the same color. And here you've got the word Amim, and here you've got the word Zamzumim. Funny words. Who are these guys? Okay, Moab and Ammon took over. We'll soon say how they took over. They didn't have the power to take over, but they were fierce people that lived before Moab and Ammon. Who were the fierce people? They are called Amim. Amim in English means terrifying people. Wow. Who are the terrifying people? Zamzumim, I haven't got exactly an explanation what it is, but it sounds a funny name. And we're talking about also big people or enormous giants and people which are frightening. Who, by the way, captured them? Avraham. If you remember the story of Avraham, that he went with 318 warriors, only 318 warriors, and we once talked about it, that actually the 318 warriors, the word warriors or the word chayal or ish are not written. Chazal even say that there weren't warriors, there was one person, that his name is the same value of 318. Who I'm talking about?
Eliezer.
Very good. I knew that you would know that. Eliezer, of course, his name is 318. If you take the value of Aleph and Lamed and Yud and Ain and Zain and Reish, it's 380. Thank you very much. Of course, you know that. So anyhow, Avraham with Eliezer, let's say that that's a midrash. The normal thing is they took a whole gang of really warriors, and he conquered the whole 4 kings that took in custody. They took Lot in custody, and he saved Lot. By the way, the whole journey, and again, I haven't brought a map. I should have brought a map. The whole journey of Avraham is going through from south to north and circling all those 4 kings, and he killed them and defeated them and came back with Lot. Is the same journey that 400 years later, who does the same journey? Here, Am Yisrael. Amazing. The same map that Abraham did and killed the 4 kings, and the 4 kings, one of the 2 nations are called Aimim and Zamzumim, and he killed them, and he managed to save Lot, and he brought him back to Eretz Israel. The same journey later, Am Yisrael comes out from Egypt, and there's the whole circle, by the way. Interesting. So here comes Hashem and says to Moshe, he says to Hashem, don't take the Moavim because they took over. They didn't take over. Abraham captured the Aimim and took over the Zamzumim, and because the land was empty, now the 2 nations came, the 2 small nations, Moab and Ammon, took their country. Interesting. So there's a lot written about the history and what's going on. But here, I'm going to the next 2 nations which are allowed to be conquered. One's called Sichon and one's called Og. And the word Sichon and Og appear many times. But here I want to go down to the bottom. And that's the most important. In the bottom, the whole 3rd place, from the brown downwards, you can see, from the brown downwards, are conclusions of what we're doing with all this land. The other side of the Jordan, and here I want to show you. Can you see here, I did a mark from Shnei Malchei Amori. Can you see in green here, the 2 fierce kings of the Amorites? Okay, the Amorite. It's written again at the bottom, again, the word Shnei Malchei Amori. And I always say that the beginning and the end is trying to conclude something in the middle. And I want to say what is concluding. And here again, I put a blue line in the middle. And I'm showing you now that the first half is talking about these nations which are fierce nations, the 2 kings, Og and Sichon. And can you see the word Og and Sichon are being repeated many, many times until the blue line. Do you see the word Og and Sichon under the blue line?
No.
No. They are called Shnei Malachim Ha'ele, but they're not called even Emori. They're not called Hittite, they're not called Emori, and they're not called anything else. And here I want to show the difference between above the blue line and under the blue line. At the beginning, when you started to capture, and I wrote here in Hebrew, Eretz Shel Og, these are the countries of Og, Ha'anak. Og was an enormous person. How do I know he was an enormous person? Because one of the verses here in gray is an interesting verse. Let's read the verse number 11. Ki rak Og melech habashan nish'ar miyeter ha'refaim. I talked about that there were enormous people on the time of Abraham, and Abraham managed to finish with those enormous people. But there was one great guy that stayed alive.
Oh.
Who was it? Og. By the way, Chazal even have a midrash that he was living a long time. He was living already from Noach, from the Teva. He was already in the ark of the Torah. He didn't go into the ark, but he was clinging on to the ark, and he stayed alive in all that rain. Okay, interesting. How does Chazal get to that? I won't go into that, but you can see there's a phrase in Noach that you might think that he, Vayavo Palit, I won't talk about it. And anyhow, here's the Rephaim. He was the only giant that stayed from the time of Abraham. He lived, and here it's written in gray, Hine arso, his bed, Eres Barzel, it's an enormous metal bed, Halohi berabat bnei Ammon, they're still keeping it in the capital of Ammon. By the way, what's the capital of Jordan today?
Amman.
Ammon. And by the way, it's called Rabat Ammon. It's called Rabat Ammon. The name stays nearly the same. It's called Amman and it's Rabat Ammon, and they preserve, Arabs always preserve the names, and many times they don't even know that. They're proving how much we Jews are much before them, and the names are very similar. Anyhow, it's written here in Rabat Ammon, his bed has been preserved, and the bed was when he was a small kid. And the size of the bed when he was a small kid, 9 amot orka ve'arba amot rochba be'amat ish. I won't explain, but it was an enormous bed for a small kid. If that was when he was a kid, can you imagine how he was enormous after he drank? Okay, there's all kinds of midrashim that explain when he was a kid wasn't good, but even so, 9.5 meters, you understand that he was at least 4.5 meters. If he was a small kid, was a big kid, he was a giant. All these psukim, all these verses until the blue line are showing you who are these giants and who are these frightening people. Also Og and also Sichon. Let me see something else. Og, can you see? Og and Ikare, and his land is called the land of the terrifying people, Rephaim. You know what's the word Rafeh? Rafeh is somebody who's trembling. Whoever sees this land, he starts trembling. Why does he start trembling? It's exactly what happened to Am Yisrael after the spies saw these giants and they were trembling. But this is until the blue line. Look what happens from underneath the blue line. Suddenly, it's not talking about the enormous giants and the enormous, I would say, heroes of these Gentiles. Not at all, not mentioned at all. Who are mentioned from the blue line onwards? Our heroes. Yair ben Menashe, he takes over. Can you see the word Ikra? This country was called once the trembling country. Now it's called Chavot Yair. It's called a different name. Now it's called Chavot Yair because Yair was a big hero, I won't go into it, that he captured 60 cities. Wow, he was an amazing hero. And then you've got Machir, and then you've got the Reuveni. And you can see that all the verses which are underneath here, the Torah is saying, you remember this land that you captured? The conclusion is, you were frightened? Don't be frightened because you've had heroes. So actually Moshe in 4 chapters, we'll talk about it, and not next week, but the week afterwards, we'll talk about what happens, the rest of the talking of Moshe, the rest of the speeches are talking about mitzvot, but this history is trying to teach you, you once trembled, you don't have to tremble, because chalutzim, you've got heroes like, for instance, Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, that were the 2 tribes that were chalutzim, that were going the first, Bnei Chayil, and you can see that the words always appear under the blue line of the heroes of Israel. There's one more figure that is mentioned. It's talking about Hashem. Before wasn't mentioned Hashem. Here it's written, Asher asa Hashem Elohechem, l'shnei hamelechim elu ken yaseh Hashem lachem. Why is all this history so important? Like you conquered these 2 enormous people, and you weren't frightened of the 40th year, remember that that's what you should be doing in the time of Yoshua when you enter the Eretz Israel. By the way, it's not only Yoshua. They should have carried on also in the book of Judges. Unfortunately, at the book of Judges, they sinned and became frightened of all these things. That means Yoshua did a good job, but he didn't finish the job. And what happened was, because he didn't finish it, the Jews mingled together with the rest of the peoples, and they started to sin, and they started to flirt with the girls, and they started to bow down to all kinds of gods, and it turned over. But here comes Moshe and says, don't be frightened. These places, lo tiraum. Can you see lo tiraum? Can you see I wrote in gray here on top of the blue line, Rephaim. You were terrified from them. And here it's written underneath the blue line, you are not frightened anymore. Why? Ki Hashem Elokechem hu hanilcham lachem. Who is going in front of your people, of your army? Of course, Hashem. And by the way, one of the things that always went before the army was, of course, the Kohen Gadol. He doesn't have to fight, but at the beginning of the war, he goes and gives speeches, and he gives the Urim Tumim. And many of the wars, they also brought the ark in front of the army. It doesn't mean that the ark was going in the war itself. It means only at the procedure at the beginning to give strength to Am Yisrael. So they bring the ark, they bring the Kohen Gadol, and he gives a nice speech and says, be brave, Hashem is together with you, and later they go and fight. So you can see that all this of chapter 2 and 3 is telling you not only history, it's telling you you should know who you should avoid fighting, and when you do fight, you definitely should know that that's an example of what will happen. We know much later, afterwards, before 72 years ago, or more than 72 years ago, we fought fiercely and we were really courageous with all these nations, or the Arab nations, and we got Eretz Israel. Quite the same like here it's written, the history repeated itself, unfortunately, after 2,000, 3,000 years later, but we've got the same history afterwards in the time of David and until today. That's what I wanted to show you, that this parasha is a full speech, but it's not only speech, it's a speech which is giving you history and conclusions to the speech. Okay, any questions? I'm ready for debates and so on. Victor, I can't see you, but can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Avi? Okay, so one more.
Good.
What?
Very good. Was very interesting.
Okay, thank you very much. Next
Yeah,
week, please.
sorry, I was on mute and on my speaker and on my car. So anyway, it was very interesting. Sorry, I couldn't attend it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Again,
Tuesday.
what I do is next week is going to be on Tuesday, because Wednesday this time will be already, I hope, either the Mashiach, I'll be in Yerushalayim and you'll be on the way flying to us, or the Mashiach won't come yet. I hope he will. So we'll be doing Echa. I'll be sitting on the floor outside my house on the thing. Please God, the first possibility. So Tuesday, not Wednesday, the same time, same hour. So thank you very much for all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Tuv.
Okay,